I'm going to go through some of our land-based warm-up. And how many people have heard the term movement screen? All right, so this is a layer of movement screens that we use. And I work in a lot of sport disciplines: winter sports, summer sports, team sports, pitch, court, whatnot. This is a staple. We use this with PGA golfers. We use this with wounded warriors returning to function and form. I live in a neighborhood with senior citizens. My wife volunteers me as the neighborhood therapist. So I have my neighbors going down the street doing this kind of stuff. Everything that we do is a movement screen to us. It's not some clinical based thing where you measure an angle or you do a simple exercise. So I'm watching how you sit, how you're holding phones, what your posture is. Are your legs crossed or your hands crossed? That's a movement screen. We watch how kids get out of their car, how they walk to the track, how they stand between reps, how they sit. Every weight room exercise is a movement screen. Every plyometric is a movement screen. Every running effort is a movement screen. So we're constantly analyzing their movement, their postures, their positions over time. There is a technical model, despite what the self-organizational people say. So if you watch 100-meter sprinters in Olympic final, nobody's running with straight arms. Nobody's running with their elbows up here. There's certain positions and postures and movements with the joints that you have to do to be at that level of output. Now there's bandwidth. Does a person block their arm here? Is a little more open? Is a little higher? That's bandwidth. But the Big Rock principles, they're in the postal code of certain positions, certain angles, certain postures. We okay so far? So we're going to do a land-based type warm-up scheme. Some people call them sprint drills. I don't know what terminology you want to use. We'll call them sprint drills for efficiency this morning. And we've got a couple test crash dummies somewhere. They still prepping? Now, I would encourage you to change perspective. So if you're looking at a sprinter from a side view, you get information in that plane. If you look head on, what you see, you won't see from the side view or from behind. And from behind, you're going to see things that you would never see from that perspective. We look at the Z-axis a lot. So the modern thing with drones are really cool because we can have the drone go along and we look at the Z-axis. All right. So what are we looking for? Well, we're looking at postures and axes and angles. So if you imagine a pole through your body, we call that the longitudinal axis of the body. So is it leaning forward? Is it leaning back? Is it neutral? So that's a frame of reference. What is the long axis doing during movement tasks, whether it's in the gym, plyos, their event, or the warm-up, or seating? So if I look at this group as a general right now, there's a bias to what we call kyphosis. Why? Because you drive and you text and you keyboard. So everybody standing here, your predisposition, if you're unaware, is a kyphotic, a rounded thorax, forward shoulder position. Now, why is that a problem? Well, when we sprint, as we undulate and oscillate, the lower thorax is where the rotation is. And if we get kyphotic, that gets locked down and the stress goes to your low back. So distance runners are great copiers. They see the canyons up here, and so they get up here and they run like this with their arms here. Well, guess what? They're going to over oscillate their shoulders, and so a lot of middle distance and distance kids complain of tight back syndrome and have tight back factors. So part of this movement screen is to detect inefficient movement that's triggering chronic injuries or that could ultimately result in an acute injury, a radical acute injury. So that's one axis. Now imagine a pull through your shoulders. That's called a transverse shoulder axis. And then a pull through your hips. That's called a transverse hip axis. And then a pull through your foot. That's called the longitudinal foot axis. So in sprinting, where's one of my test crash dummies?
Yeah, he's here.
So don't rag him too hard. All right, we haven't rehearsed this, so he's totally confused. All right, now I want you to get in a sprint posture where you block at the top. All right, so when a sprinter blocks there, how's your balance? You okay?
Probably not very good.
Well, if you need a break. So in world-class sprinting, we know that when they block on the front side, this angle is 20 to 30 degrees. The thumb's above the acromion process. The thighs parallel to the ground. Does everybody agree that's a pretty common KPI position? Okay, you can take a break. Switch legs. All right, the back arm opens about 130. So we've got an angle between two lever arms, the humerus and the forearm. This is like 120. Now switch, just standing in place, just switch back and forth. Yep, switch. So you'll notice as he's switching, if we look at the transverse shoulder axis and the transverse hip axis, they are undulating and oscillating. Can you see that? So when he blocks here, like stop, this shoulder is higher than the block shoulder and it's farther in front. Switch. Now the shoulder's reversed. Can you see how that axis is undulating and oscillating? Keep going. The hip axis is an opposite phasic. So if this arm's up, the opposite hip's up. So they're undulating and oscillating in a harmony, and that rate of harmony is product of speed. So standing in place, slow, it's a real slow thing. If you sprint, it gets faster. So we're looking at those axes. How are they doing? Are they operating? If they over oscillate and don't undulate, you've got a problem. Because we know in sprinting or running fast, the 5 big rocks are each stride gets longer, each stride gets quicker, contact times lessen, air times increase, and the attack angle changes each step. And for those things to happen, these axes change through time in rhythm with those variables. And if not, then you got problems. So a person that over oscillates and doesn't undulate, we classify them, they sit, they don't get tall. They're lacking the vertical force production and awareness, or they're blocking the undulatory movement. We okay so far? Or we're like, oh shit. All right, so in place, just sprinting like we were doing. So we notice that when the leg comes through, this knee angle changes. It opens and closes, so just back and forth. So the knee angle has unique angles at different pathways. So in world-class sprinting, the foot comes off the ground, the knee folds to have a shorter radius. Then when we lift and block the thigh, that transfers to the lower leg. It swings out and then we come back into the ground. The leg is a pendulum through a cyclic maneuver. So another thing that we're doing is we're looking at torso to thigh angles, knee angles, ankle angles. Are they dorsiflexed? The ankle's like a spring mechanism. If it's pointed, if it's plantar flexed, when you hit the ground, you're going to collapse, have wobble, and you're going to lose spring energy. So we use the cue, you want the forefoot and the ankle cocked like a gun, and you hold it to the last second. It's a reflexive action. If I threw a ball to you, you would catch it. You wouldn't think, here it comes, close my hand. You just catch it, right? A Purkinje-like reflex. That's sprinting. As you're about to hit the ground, you sense how fast you're moving through space and the foot fires itself. How do I know that? I work with a lot of Paralympians. I work with a lot of blind athletes. You have to teach them how to do that because they don't have any awareness of how fast they're moving. So blind athletes, untrained, will land way back on the heel, land very flat-footed for a long period of time to figure out where they're at, and then they pronate off. So that's an example of how we're looking at axes. All right, so in place. So if we look at the foot axis, we look at the orientation of the foot. So he's slightly external. It's this back and forth. Not bad on this side. Just look, don't try to be perfect. Just look out. Just march. So his predisposition is the right foot has more external rotation. That's going to promote the talus joint to slide medial. That's going to cause a fibular upslick, which will put a lot of pressure on the right IT band. So if you got IT band issues that are chronic, you always go downstairs and look at what's happening to the foot axis. All right, you can take a break.
Thanks.
You all right?
I'm fine.
I'm CPR certified. Do you know what that is?
I think it's just my emotions are going to get hit the most.
It's all right. Hey, it's all love. Don't go too far though. All right, in sprinting, as the foot comes into the ground, the foot is supinated. In other words, it looks like you're going to land on the outer edge. And then as the foot strikes the ground, all 5 toes touch, the heel sinks, and then we pronate off. So how many of us were taught, land on the ball of your foot and stay tall? That's bullshit. If you study fast people, that's not what's going on. Now, would I teach heel touching the ground? No, but it should happen. Why does the heel sink to touch the ground? It puts things on stretch in the posterior chain, and that's the only way the talus and calcaneus can slide and the tib fib can expand in mid-stance support. World-class sprinters at 50 meters at mid-stance have what we call amortization in the ankle, knee, and hip joint. They yield to put things on stretch before they spring off. So those angles at the hip, knee, and ankle amortize, they yield to put things on stretch to allow translation of the joints for the athlete to spring off the ground. So the foot supinates, 5 toes touch, heel sinks, and then we pronate off. Well, if you use the long axis of the foot, you can measure where you're deficient. So sprinters are biased, they over-supinate, and they minimally pronate. So you got to get a movement map on what's correct for my person in that event. Some people over-pronate. Some people don't get to the big toe because of joint malalignment or issues. So they'll supinate and they'll pronate to the second ray. Anybody have athletes where the big toe is curved in and they have bunions? Those are people that are pronating off the second ray. They're not getting to the first ray. So when they're inefficient, because instead of using 5 toes like a piano, they're using 4. So they're cheating themselves out of a possible additional soldier in the battle. All right, so you got an idea of axes and angles. So that's the first layer of analysis. It's compared to the biomechanical model, and then you collect data, you build files in your head for your athlete's movement strategy and what their bandwidth is. So if a person's blocking here, I'm okay, here I'm okay, somewhere in here I'm all right. But if they're blocking here, that's a problem. How many of us were taught keep your elbows at 90 degrees? That's bullshit too. Nobody does that that's running fast. So because the knee is opening and closing, the opposite arm has to open and close to counterbalance it to create rotational dynamics in the spine. So in fact, sprinters, after they block, as they drive the arm down and back, the arm's actually fully extended as it passes the body. And then it blocks at 130 off the hip. So the elbows open and close in harmony with the knee opening and closing. Are we okay? So if you look at the arms like pendulums on a clock and the legs, if we walk, when I walk, there's a little bit of flexion in my knee. I flex and extend, not fully. The elbow mimics that. So if you look at how the angles of my knee opening and closing, my elbows opening and closing and then as we run and get faster, go through bigger ranges, those angles change through time. So we're looking at joint angles, axes against a normative map. Good. Questions so far? Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a question. I found from my athletes, if they have too acute angle here, they moving shoulder up.
That
I
can.
think it can go depend how long comes.
Now, I think what
Because
it
everyone have different lengths. Some can do this movement, some just do because arm
I think that
anatomically shorter.
that may be true. My first instinct, if they're doing this, then there's scapula problems and first and second rib problems. That's why it's elevating. Yeah. So I would look therapeutically what's going on in the shoulder. Yes.
Is the amortization timing related to the resonant frequency of the weakest link in that chain?
Yes. So there's drivers that influence the movement dynamic. All right, where's my crash test dummy? All right, how many people have heard the term fluid dynamics? All right, so in anatomy, in physical training, in physical therapy, in sports medicine, we're biased to what we call on the branch of engineering statics. What are the structures doing? The tendons, the ligaments, the bursas, the fat pads, the cartilage. Those are hard body things, hardware. But the human body is fluid. We have blood, we have lymph, we have water, and all of that. How many people understand hydraulics, like a tractor or a crane lifting something? So you got lever arms, and you have these hoses filled with hydraulic fluid with, if they rupture, it stinks pretty bad and it's pretty greasy. But that hydraulic explains how it can lift something super heavy that a normal lever system wouldn't. So anybody ever pulled the engine out of a car? So you have a block and tackle system and you're pulling the engine or raise a flag on a pole. That's a static, simple math lever system equation. But the human body is fluid dynamics. We're using static engineering driven by hydraulics. So I want everybody to make a fist. So now you have maximum fluid in this joint system. And that's why you can punch hard and why you can absorb force and you don't hurt yourself. Now open your hands, spread the fingers. Now you have less fluid in those joint systems. So if you were to hit somebody, it wouldn't feel good and it wouldn't be very powerful, would it? So how we manipulate our body parts influences fluid dynamics. So we're going to bias this workout today, and I'm going to ask him to stay dorsiflexed all the way to the ground, to land heel first and to roll through the foot. That will maximize fluid dynamics in the joint. It will protect the foot. It will promote fluid dynamic integrity. It'll reboot the computer. How fast is a sprint drill across the ground, would you guess? Meter per second, maybe 2. That's a fast walk. If you're walking to the plane late, you're still rolling through your foot. Why? Because that's efficient. You're using hydraulic power to get to the gate on time. So, oh, well, they're going to run on their toes. Yeah, but this isn't running. This is a warm-up drill at a unique speed. So that's the reason for my bias there. So you don't have to buy into it, but maybe something you experiment with or you think about. All right, so do you know what an A skip is? A marching skip.
If yours is the same as mine, then...
Well, let's back up and see. So we're going to go from this pole, and we'll go to the coaches standing there.
So just a walking...
Yeah, an A skip. So what I want you to do is, the emphasis is land heel first and roll through the foot. All right, whenever you're ready.
So a walking one?
No, bouncing.
Okay.
All right, so we're looking, is he able to land heel first, or is he so tight on the posterior side he can't even get his heel down, which is the case here. All right, I'm going to have you overcue it like crazy. You're going to land way back on your heel and then roll through the foot. That's better. So sometimes you can cue it. Now we're looking, is the thigh blocking parallel to the ground on the free leg? What's happening to his arms? Where's his head? How heavy is a human head? 9 kilos plus? So if it's out of position, where are you going? You're falling. What's your instinct if you're falling? Put your foot out. All right, so I want your head neutral. I want you to block a little higher. I want your free arm a little farther off the hip, and I want you way back on the heel. So now that's looking a little bit more like sprinting. So you can see the arms are angulating and undulating in rhythm with the knee joint. And again, perspective matters. So you're watching from the side. Okay, come out here. Okay, come towards the audience. So you're going to see things in the frontal plane that you couldn't see from the side. Good. You blowing? All right, stand here. So knee up, put your arm on my shoulder for balance. So when we block, the femur is diagonal. That's the way the system. So the VMO should be on the umbilicus. If the femur's outside, that means the external rotators of the hip are super tight, super short. So the gemelli, obturator internus, externus, piriformis, quad fem. So this is one of the things we look on head on. So because that's diagonal, this arm will actually block with a little bit of internal flare to counterbalance that. Then as he drives down and back. So a lot of people teach keep your arms straight. That's going to bias this undulation. It's actually somewhat diagonal and it somewhat flares out because of how the thigh operates in the hip socket in the acetabulum. All right, turn around. Now we're going to look from the rear view. Just go 10 yards. And so now we can see what the scapula is doing, how the rib cage is moving. Are the hips undulating and oscillating? All right. So everybody know what an ilium is. So you have a right ilium and a left ilium. Everybody know what a sacrum is. People think that's an immovable joint system. It's not. It has many contact points and it moves. All right, come here. I want you to get in a lunge position like you're going to start, like you're doing a start.
Like I'm doing a start.
Yeah, just lunge out, like split, get in a split stance. All right, so when you push off the ground and attack, the ilium on this side, flip around, is what we call anteversion. It's tilted forward. The opposite ilium is probably neutral or retroversion. All right, stand up. So when we run, when we push off, the ilium goes forward. In mid-flight, it comes back to neutral. And then as the leg opens and swings and sweeps to the ground, the ilium actually goes into retroversion. So these iliums are undulating and oscillating as we run. If they lock down, those forces have to go somewhere. And that's where a lot of overuse injuries and piriformis syndrome and ruptured disc come from, because this hip complex is not moving the way that it should. All right, so I'm going to have you turn around and go back out. And I want you to look at the hips and see if you can see this undulation and oscillation, this anteversion, neutral, retroversion.
Side skip again?
Yeah. All right, pause, just stand there. So what I'm seeing is on the left side it's free, on the right side it's blocked. So that right side's going to overreach, overextend. He's going to have more problems or complaints on the right side. Coming back at us. You can also get into rhythm dynamics. So on the left, you can see it's quick, it's elastic, it's very reflexive, and on the right, it's laborious, there's a lag, there's a hesitation. Okay, again, that way. So I want you to look at joint reflexiveness. The left, how quick and dynamic, and the right, how it's kind of forced, and it really won't release for him to push off. All right, come back. So once you get good at chunking information, you can start looking at different features. when you start out, you may have to say, well, I'm watching the right foot, and then maybe the left foot, and then, okay, I can watch feet. Okay, now I can watch feet and knees. So you have to train your eye. You have to develop a coach's eye for a lot of this movement screen. Okay, go to that post. So now we're going to take it out a notch. So like we said in sprinting, after the knee blocks, that momentum transfers and the lower leg swings out, puts things on stretch, and we sweep the leg back into the ground. So the control mechanism for how far, fast, and reflexive that lower leg swings is controlled by the bicep femoris, long head and short head. So people that get a lot of injuries there, it's because of a mistiming or an overextensive moment at the knee joint. So we're going to do a B skip, you know, where you open up. The difference for you is going to be, I want the action up and open to be real slow and reflexive and easy. You're going to put work into grabbing the ground with your heel. All right, B skip. Okay, coming back.
That's sort of what you wanted?
Yep. So we're looking, how far does the knee swing out before he comes down?
Different.
Yeah. So one lower leg's opening and one's just staying closed. So the one staying closed is guarding. It won't release. So there's some history there. Okay, come here.
The lefty.
Go that way.
That way?
So what do you see from behind? All right, so we know that there's some right side going on, but there's also some left side. Where did we say the VMO should be on the block, on the umbilicus, right? Look at his left leg. As he comes back, you're gonna see that the femur's biased external compared to the right. So you can see the right leg's coming way across the body and the left staying out here. So here's how he's running down the track. You ever had your tires out of alignment? What happens to your tire wear? Yeah, so he's going to have a blowout eventually if these things aren't addressed.
Dan, is that related to probably being like a 400 runner?
Yep.
Just running the middle?
Yeah, so I work a lot with short track skaters, and you know, they're the worst. Ice skaters, the short track. Cyclists have the problem, velodrome people. There is a bias there. And this is why I like the idea of bandwidth. You can't get them neutral. You know, they're doing 8 million reps at pace this way. But can we correct somewhat? Because if we just let the bias grow and grow and grow, pretty soon we've got dysfunction.
So would you look to hold him there or to bring him back?
To me, that's danger zone. Like, I don't want to see it that radical. So I would, through time, nudge it to a little more copacetic. We good?
We're good.
You're a 400 runner, right?
Yeah.
And we haven't done anything over 10 yards. That brings up a great point. The specificity of work capacity. We've got this idea if we do global stuff, it'll bleed down and fix immediate stuff. Doesn't work that way. You build capacities for task. So by the end of this session, he's going to be blown out because he's doing things differently at a different rate of work with different forces and different angles. So he has no capacity for this work. He could run up that mountain 20 times. It wouldn't help him do these drills. So work capacity is very specific. It's a pet peeve of mine. We got to get fit or we have to get robust. What the hell do you have to get fit? What needs to be robust? Work capacity is specific. How many steps does a high jumper take? 8, 10, 12? How far is that? 30 meters? How many jumps in a competition? 10, 12, 8? How long is the competition? Are they ever anaerobic? No. Why the hell are they running 300s in the off season? It's wasted heartbeats. They need work capacity to run 10 steps over and over and over at a certain speed and then jump at the end of it. We've got to get away from this grinding, general, global attitude that's permeated coaching, not just in our sport, but in all sports.
What about the general capacity that they say aids recovery if you're just generally fitter?
Well, NBA basketball players, all they do is play basketball. 10 months a year. And they don't train. Off season, the first month, they play golf, drink, chase women. Second month, they start shooting, and they're in season. When we test them for anaerobic glycolysis function, thresholds, capacities, aerobic indices, we look at 10 mitochondrial enzyme maps. They're off the chart. You can train global stuff from the bottom up. That's our research. So I think it's easy to measure aerobic indices in the lab. And so we get caught up doing that, thinking we need global aerobic activities to improve it. But if you and I hike up that mountain about 50 times a day for a month, we're going to be fit as shit, and we haven't run a step. All right, here we go. On the post. I'm going to have you walk backwards, so you're going to bend your knee and reach back. You're going to plant on the ball of the foot and roll flat. Roll to the heel. Yep. Don't worry about your arms. Just let them hang. You're not a motor genius. Just let them hang. All right, so our warm-up is multi-directional. The human body is 3 dimensions. So we do things in multiple directions in the warm-up or in the movement screen. So on this backward walk, we're looking how anterior chain muscle systems are opening and closing. We look at balance again. So we can look at the long axis. Is there wobble? Is there undulation and oscillation? Is he able to hold it? Stop here. Walk backwards that way. Face the audience. What's going on with this oscillation and undulation? Is he listing or casting to one side? Okay, come back at us. What's the foot axis doing? Can you see the bias in his right foot? It's external. That's a time bomb. If your foot's external, that talus is going to start sliding medially. So you're open to foot stress reactions, to sinus tarsi, tarsal tunnel problems, Achilles tension, and it just goes upstream from there. So that's at walking speed. It's slow. It's a lot of postural stabilizers, slow twitch factors, so on the post. Now we're going to check your manhood. You're going to skip backwards.
Skip backwards.
Yeah.
Running skip?
Skipping. Just double bounce on each foot. There you go.
Do you think that right foot's more related to the hip, or is it?
Right now it's left ilium so locked down that it's transferring across. All right. So from side, you look pretty good, but from head on, these people are going to have a heart attack. So stand here. Now, big picture, you want the quickest way between 2 points, straight line, right? So generally, you want to see things summarizing synergistically in a line, right? Relatively. Okay, skip backwards. We're going to go 20 yards because the first 10 yards, they're going to be, oh my God, and then the second 10 yards, they're going to start thinking.
Thanks.
Okay, first question, what was his line of travel? So going forwards, he's learned how to compensate and cover it up and see his target. Running backwards, he can't see, and he has no experience at how to correct or compensate. So did you see the veering? Did you see one leg looking like a dog shaking his leg after he pissed on a fire hydrant? Could you see that? Let's do it again. I want you guys to watch the right foot, right lower leg, and you've all seen a dog piss on a fire hydrant, right? And they get a little on their leg. Let's see if we get that effect. So that tells me that the knee joint is severely compromised. The tib-fib proximal is rotated external. There's an upslip in the femur, or the fibula, promoted by this talus being dumped. And so the architectural system is biased that way on his movement. So he was aware we were looking at it. He was trying to fix it. He still veered, and it was still a hoopy-doo. All right, face the field. You thought it was fun going straight. Watch this shit from behind. Go.
What am I doing?
Yeah, you're going to go back there and come at us backwards.
Oh.
Dan,
Yeah.
on that first one, I didn't notice the right leg so much, but the left leg was, for me, was sticking out a lot further.
Yeah, that's that left ilium that it's so trapped, the legs having to try to find ways to move.
Yeah.
All right. Now, can you see at mid-support on the right how the heel slides medially? What's happening to the Achilles? Okay, go back. They didn't see that. Go back. All right, we're going to really take our coach's eye and get myopic here. So you're going to watch his right heel. His right heel, where it lands, what it does. All right. Can you see it toe off? It just slams medial. And then the left side is stuck commensurately. Pretty cool.
If we'd met earlier, may have been pretty good.
Nah, I'd have probably screwed it up. I think you're a little bit of an OCD guy, so you would notice shit I'd say, and then you'd go home all night going, oh. All right, so here. All right, next thing we're going to do is what we call a straight leg scissor bound. You've done scissor bounds. The difference for you, you're going to grab heel first. Keep the arms relatively straight. So all of these drills are like teaching trees. You can do them at different speeds, different ranges or whatnot. We're just doing the basic, same thing. So this has given us a lot of information on posterior chain. What's happening in the glutes, the erectors, the QL, and the hamstrings. All right, so I would call that medium tempo, medium length. I'm going to have you go really fast, not very big range, just as quick as you can do it. So speeds change, so we have to monitor things at different speeds, different forces, different angles, and different duration of those qualities. Okay, now I want you to do them real big, almost bound-like. So on a plan B, if you go big, there's more range. So if you're fighting an injury then you would stay short and quick. So you can modify these things on return to play.
Is that too toey?
Yeah, for me it is, but hell, this guy's trying his ass off. All right, face this way. Go about 15 meters.
Which one?
Scissor bound, medium, just medium. So now we can look at these iliums, foot axes.
Would you try to work on more extension of the back, or?
Depends on what he's fighting. With what I'm seeing in the right knee, I wouldn't go big right now. I'd keep it short and let the therapist kind of address some of this. You doing all right? Huh?
Yeah, just went out last night's gym.
Yeah. Fair dinkum. That's the only Aussie word I know. All right. Now, a variation of this is I'm going to put him in a half squat position, and you're going to stay in a half squat position. That knee angle is going to stay. So we're going to do scissor bounds. We call them flex leg scissor bounds. That's going to move the fulcrum from here down to the knee. So now we can get a snapshot what lower hamstrings, gastroc soleus plantaris, things like that. Go. Heel first. Good. Okay. Let's go here so they can see it from behind. So do a down and back so we can see a behind and a forward. And then you start noticing things. So in a flexed position, we're not seeing any of that foot craziness, are we? So we know that the craziness is occurring during the extensive moment. So it's a way to reduce the puzzle. Come back. So you can see in this posture where the torso's forward and the joints are flexed, none of that craziness showed up. That's why we got to be careful with clinical decisions. I can lay you on a bed, test things, get one result. Supine prone, different. Standing, different. At speed, different. Different angles. So therapeutic diagnosis and prognosis is very specific to task. So most world-class sprinters I had, if they went into a clinic and had testing, the doctor would say you're not allowed to train. And these guys are running world record shit because when they're moving, they know how to cheat the system. It's a time bomb. So we've got to juggle those balls. You all right? Huh?
We'll be fine.
Okay. You sure?
Yeah.
All right. All right, so the next series we're going to go through is what we call our dribble series. So it's a bridge gait. So we're taking normal gait and abridging it to simpler task. So in our dribble series, we have 3 heights and we have 2 shapes that we're monitoring, that we're using as a teaching tool. We think the dribble series gives context for vertical force production, vertical velocity, amortization skill. We think it's building file systems for awareness for a lot of these athletes. It's a return to play staple. So we start out at walking speed, master that. Jogging speed, master that. Up tempo, master that. And we're also going through this grid. So we have 3 heights. I want you to stand and I want you to cycle about your ankle, about the malleolus, just in place, just in place. So that's called an ankle dribble. Toe up, really exaggerate it. Swinging out too far. Want a real tiny bicycle, like you're in the circus on one of those little bicycles. So that's an ankle dribble. The next height is over the calf, so it's going to be a little bigger circle. Yep. And the next height's over the knee, so it's going to be an even bigger circle. Can you see how that's a progression of movement skill? And you can make this open and closed chain. So I'm going to command, I'm going to tell you what height. All right? So ankle, calf, knee, ankle, calf, ankle, knee, calf. So say you're really injured and you can't move through space, you can create variability. Remember the big rocks. If we want good remodeling, we have to constantly have variety to angles, forces, velocities, and duration of those things. So that, what you saw there, we call a concentric shape. Concentric, a perfect circle. So over the ankle again. So what we see on the back side, we should see on the front side. The radiuses should be relatively equal. Over the calf. And some people will overswing out, some people will push behind. This is where you start building context for awareness of what the gait cycle should look like. Over the knee. So that's concentric. Take a break, face the mountain so you can work the other leg. We good so far? All right. So we have 3 heights. So you can see as the radius gets bigger, you're going to have to push up with more force and more velocity to buy time for the revolution to occur. So that's how you're building context for vertical force production and vertical velocities. You're changing demands on the operating system. The second shape we use is what we call elliptical. So it's egg shaped. It's like an egg. So we're going to go over the ankle egg-shaped? So can you see that it's more elliptical? Go over the calf, egg-shaped. And then over the knee, egg-shaped. So now that's getting closer to running, isn't it? So running is this hybrid between concentric and elliptical depending on our posture, fatigue, and skill sets and injury history. So athletes need to know how to modulate that and adjust that as conditions change through the workout or through the race or down the runway. We good so far? So the progression would be in place, walking, jogging, a little faster. It's a mastery process. If they can't do them all those shapes and all those heights, you don't move to the next degree of difficulty on a return to play. You can use these as conditioning things. We actually have people do workouts like they got a hamstring problem. They'll use these abridged gaits. Greg Rutherford probably didn't do a real running workout the last 3 years of his career. He did these kind of activities. If we had acceleration, he would do over the ankle or the calf. If we had speed workouts, he'd go over the calf. If we had alactic workouts, he'd do a hybrid ankle and calf. He did 680 for 60 meters over the ankle. 6.80. All right, so we're gonna play. You ready? Let's get. All right, over the ankle jogging speed.
Over the ankle.
Concentric. Heel first. Too big. Make it smaller. Make it smaller. Make it circular. You're kind of up and down like a tap dancer. There we go. We're a little more circular. All right, take a break. So very four-footed. Now, how fast he's moving across the ground? Less than a meter per second? That's walking this speed. What's the limbic brain telling his foot to do? Roll. What's he doing? Is there confusion? You bet. The limbic brain is powerful. All right, so slow it down over the ankle. I want you to super exaggerate heel first rolling. That's better. I'll be quiet, silent. You think a leopard makes noise stalking game? That's some more bullshit. Rate of force development. You guys heard that term. Got to pound the ground. If you pound the ground, you're firing muscles out of order. Fast people are silent. Over the calf, jogging speed. Heel first, quiet, make your foot silent. All right, take a break. He's already blowing. So he's biased, isn't he? The forefoot landing, early plantar flexion, the strike point way in front of the center mass. So we're blowing up myths this morning. How many of us were taught land right under your center mass? So that's bullshit too, you'd fall. Where you land in front of your axis, your ability to convert vertical and horizontal. So some long jumpers plant this far in front, some this far in front, this same speed, but where do they put the foot? It depends on their ability to convert. So there's bandwidth to where we strike the ground. First principle, the shank of the lower leg should be perpendicular when you strike the ground. All right, so we're gonna go over the calf. A little bit of coaching. Super heel strike. Like, no, don't even let your toes touch. And be quiet as hell. Like you're sneaking in your girlfriend's apartment. It's 2 a.m. and her dad's staying over. Like, you got to get this right.
I hope she's not living with her parents.
Yeah, do you have game? There we go. You started out well. So what I'm seeing is the left foot is trying to cooperate, the right is really stuck, and that's that joint position. So if they're trying hard and cueing and they can't do it, it's probably a therapy problem. If that talus is slid medial, then that ankle cannot dorsiflex. He externally rotates to get through that joint. Okay, over the knee now. Heel first and quiet. All right, break. So you can see as speed increases, his virus got worse and worse and worse. The early plantar flexion, the too far forward on the forefoot strike. All right, so now we're going to go egg shape. Over the ankle. So the egg shape, you're getting a little more displacement in the frontal plane. There's a little more swing out and there's a little more displacement. So this was the segue back into running. Concentric's really safe, and then as you add elliptical, you're adding stress. Over the calf, egg shape. All right, and then over the knee, egg shape. Good. So hopefully what you're seeing is there's subtle changes in the angles and the rhythm and the pendular movements depending on speed and shape. So what's that doing in the grand scheme of things? We chunk information in our brain for reference. Does this transfer to sprinting directly? No. But it gives you file systems to process information to make speedier, more correct decisions. You're building context. So you can see concentrically, he's a little bit lost as he changed height. Elliptically, he's very confused at low level, but as he got higher level stuff, he kind of figured out how to cheat the system and get the job done. So this is an example how you use layers of a simple thing like a warm-up as a movement screen, as a teaching tool, and moving things forward. Yeah.
I've seen you in the past as well, and when he went bigger and bigger, his arm stays the same, or even worse, he was going more backwards. There's nothing in the front was happening. He was trying to compensate through the upper body to what's going on with the leg.
Very good.
It's because of his lack of exposure to this drills, and
He's just controlling by his upper body when taking him down.
So he has very little context and he has no variety to a solution. So he's biased to a solution.
It's controlling. Like it's happened with my athletes. I'm coaching Paralympians, particularly with leg amputee. They controlling what happened here by upper body.
Yeah, I work with a lot of CPs and you know, big problems with that compensate. But if you buy into the model and you have bandwidth and you're working with CPs, okay, I can't fix this, but how can I nudge things so it's not so fatal? All right, so we're going to go, and like I said, this is a teaching tree. So this is pretty close chain. We can make it open chain. I can throw balls at him while he's doing it. I can do it on command. So that's another progression to see if the context is actually usable into action. So we're going to do an open chain thing. So we're going to go concentric, so just the perfect circle, and I'm going to call the height, and you got to switch to it right away. All right, so back up a little. Okay, ready? Ankle, calf, knee, ankle, calf, ankle, knee, calf, ankle. Now, where is this good? What happens in hurdling? You change recovery height and gait to fit it in. If they can't do this on the ground, how in the hell are you going to do it with shit flying at them? They don't have context. You ever have the athlete that keep getting jammed on hurdles and you try close hurdles and you yell at them and they're still jammed? They don't have the context for the solution. This is one methodology to help them build context to find their solution. You ready? Egg shape on command. Back up. They want to see you. Okay, over the knee. Egg shape now. Try to land on your heels. Be quiet. Calf. Ankle. Calf. Ankle. Knee. So that would be open chain. Want to make it more open chain? I'm going to throw a med ball at him while he's doing it. I'm going to be facing him and he's doing that. That takes the arms out of it and it shows us the bias that's going on downstairs. So you can split screen to do analysis where your problems are coming from. You blowing yet? You're pretty fit, right? And this shit's kicking your ass. So, is work capacity specific to task? Oh, all right. So, questions, problems, issues, arguments.
I want to ask about centre of gravity. When I know you coach pole vaulters, where are they going to foot strike when they're carrying the pole? Because their centre of gravity isn't in the body.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can catch your breath and get some water. How are you at pole vaulting?
Oh, great.
All right. Well, we got a pole vault question, so they're getting a pole, and we're going to do some stuff. My first thing is, if they can't do it without the pole, if they don't have context and awareness, now we're really behind the 8 ball. So I coach a lot of sports where hands are tied up: ice hockey, field hockey, lacrosse, and things like that. So you still want undulation and oscillation of these axes. So when you have the pole carry, people pick up the rotation by going back and forth or excessively up and down. Or really what we're trying to get is that shoulder axis harmonic with the hip axis. Because we're alternate grip and we're semi-rotated, you're always going to have a stride length difference. So the left side has a tendency to overstride, overreach, and the right side has a tendency to be more abridged. The right side, right-handed pole vaulter, usually those joint systems are compacted from that. So you got to do therapy and exercises to open that up after jump workouts and competitions, because it's just going to manifest and grow if you don't. From a physics standpoint, it makes sense, and we've done a lot of testing on this. You start to run with the pole up and diagonal. That creates less stress. And then as you're running down the runway, the pole starts to align and the pole drops. And that harmony of shift to alignment and that harmony of pole drop influences how damaging this tie-up really is to the system. So a lot of novices, they want the pole lined up, so they pick up the pole and start with it lined up, drop shoulder, and so they're running down the runway like this. I'm exaggerating it. So the compensation and the injuries are going to manifest. The right side are going to be compaction injuries, and the left side's going to be extension injuries. And that's what we see. The other thing that I see a lot in pole vaulting is, in the long jump, we roll the penultimate and we roll the takeoff. It's not stabbing. Because in vaulting, the pole will help pick you up. There's not the premium on setting up the jump. And so a lot of people will stab the penultimate and stab the takeoff. And I think that's why we have an epidemic of Achilles problems in pole vaulters, especially women pole vaulters. That's my epidemiological evidence for that. But first stop is, can they do this stuff well without the pole? And then I'll introduce like broken poles. So we'll do these drills with a mini pole, working on these big ticket items. And then we'll shift the pole runs where they're using that, and then we shift it to the runway. And then we build movement maps. So I would film my vaulters doing what we just did, and then I would film them with a mini pole, and then I'd film them with a pole run, and I would compare. And if I'm 2 standard deviations away movement-wise from what I'm doing free, I've got a problem. And that might direct how you program and coach and nudge people into correctness. Very good question. And it's the same thing, like we both work in Paris, so we got to fight prosthetics and limb positions. So I coached a guy named Johnny Peacock. He's 2-time Paralympic champion, world record holder. He was below the knee amputee, meningitis. And he came as a talent ID, and no one had really taught him how to use his knee. So he was like a pirate, even though he was below the leg. So he came to us at 11:40, and that year he won the London Olympics at 10:70. And all we did is teach him how to have symmetry at the knee joint commensurate to the able side. That was the big ticket mechanically. We had to get the movement of the joint systems harmonic as harmonic as possible. It uses a big S blade with a big toe, so it's not going to be perfect, but it's got to be closer to perfect. You know, he was never going to run under 11 like a pirate. You just can't move the joints and quick enough. So it's the same thing in para. It's just different areas that are restricted. Yes, sir.
I was wondering, the foot strike as the distances get longer and the efficiency of it, does it change at all, or do you think?
Yeah, it changes, and you know, there's plenty of research and arguments. Are they forefoot striker, are they heel striker, and all that. The first big rocks for me is the shank perpendicular when they contact the ground? Because if it's obtuse, that's blockage, that's shearing. But the opposite problem, distance runners do a lot of what I call survival gait. So they get down here and they just shuffle and recover. Now the shank angle's acute to the ground. And if they don't have these drills where they know how to manipulate that shank angle through speed, they're going to stay in that gait. So if I'm acute and every time I'm sprinting I'm acute and I try to go faster, I'm going to over rotate. So I'm going to fall each step. So I have to put the foot out to stop the falling. So there's big braking forces. So for me, the first stop is the shank perpendicular at whatever speed? And then from a health safety standpoint, the longer you can hold on to dorsiflexion and keep fluid in the joints, the safer you're going to be. The earlier you plantar flex, the higher your risk. And we've proved that with ultrasound diagnostics